ongoing efforts to hold ICE accountable, including right here in Baltimore City. And I want to thank all of the members of the federal delegation, Senator Alsterbrooks, and members of our House delegation you're going to hear from for participating in this ongoing effort to hold ICE accountable. Thank you to the Maryland General Assembly, President Ferguson, for all your efforts to stop the Trump ICE terror in the state of Maryland, and to Mr. Mayor and members of the County Council, Mayor Scott, President Cohen, members of the City Council, thank you for the efforts you're undertaking as well. So I think most of us saw that video that went viral back in January about the absolutely inhumane conditions in that office right upstairs in this building. And it showed the complete inhumanity of the operation there. And I asked to go the next day to visit the holding center here, and they refused. ICE absolutely refused at that time. Now, the only reason we were able to go today is since that time, a judge has made it clear what we all knew, what we've known from the beginning, which is members of Congress not only have a responsibility, but an absolute right to conduct oversight responsibilities as part of our job. And that's why we were there today. They earlier this morning tried to say we couldn't go. We read them the law, and we went. Now today, it happens to be that there's nobody in this facility. So we asked a lot of questions of the acting director there. And I do want to cover a couple key points, because last Friday, Judge Rubin, a federal court judge right here, operating out of this building, issued a really important ruling, which will require them to change the way they do business here. Because what Judge Rubin said was, you can only have a maximum of 55 people in this holding facility at any one time. If you go through the rooms, you'll see that just one of the 5 rooms had a sign saying maximum number of people, 70. Cramming 70 people into one room when the judge made it clear that for all 5 rooms, the maximum was 55. In fact, if you add up the capacity that they claimed that they could take, squeezing people in inhumanely, it was 226 people. And we believe they've exceeded even that at some points in time. But a judge said that is absolutely inhumane and put that cap on it. They say they understand the ruling from last Friday. They're still looking through it. That ruling also required ICE Baltimore to do medical screenings within 12 hours of people who come in. We've seen almost 40 people die in ICE custody last year, and 9 already in these first months of this year. So the least they can do is make sure that they address people's urgent medical needs. That is something they conceded they had not been doing. So thank you, Judge Rubin, for making them do that. Now, all of us recognize that the challenge with ICE is not limited to Baltimore City, although I'm grateful, and we're going to hear from Baltimore City leadership about what they're doing. We also know that ICE purchased a facility in Washington County, Maryland. They spent over $100 million of your taxpayer money to do that. And just last week, late last week, we learned that they're spending another $113 million in that facility to build it out and to hold people just for 2 months. And there's an option to continue it for another 3 years for over $640 million of your taxpayer money. This is your taxpayer dollars at work, and they're not doing what they said they're going to do. They absolutely lied to the country when they said they were going to focus on the worst of the worst. We know that's not true. And they've admitted it in this holding facility in our past visits. And if you look at ICE's own data, overwhelmingly the people who were detained and locked up pose no threat to public safety. So that's what their focus has been. We also know, in very troubling fashion, that they're increasing the number of people they hire here in Baltimore ICE. Many of you wrote about the fact there were about 100 ICE cars in the city in a parking lot. One of the buildings here happens to be the building where I also have my Senate offices. And so those vehicles have been dispersed throughout the city, but it's obvious if you're bringing in another 100 cars, and they agreed that they were going to be significantly increasing the number of ICE folks here. So we need to do here in Baltimore what the people of Minneapolis did, literally blowing the whistles to help protect neighbors and shine a light on wrongdoing, because it's only because of people with cameras like many of you have that we know that ICE absolutely lied when they called Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists. They were Americans exercising their constitutional rights, shot down by Trump's ICE federal agents and other federal agents. We can't have that in Minneapolis. We can't have it in Baltimore. We can't have it in America, which is why all of us here from the federal delegation have said not one more dime for Trump's lawless ICE operations. And with that, I want to turn it over to a great partner in the United States Senate who's also tried to get into this facility before. Today, she will bring you her reflections from this visit. Senator Alsobrooks.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much, Senator Van Hollen. Thank you so much for your leadership. I want to thank all my other colleagues who joined me today and who are standing here with me this morning. We are on the right side of history here in this delegation. I'm going to tell you, history will not be kind when it records the activities of our country right now relating to ICE. This is the second time I've had an opportunity to come to this particular facility, and each time it makes the hair stand up on your arms. It really does. This facility is unfit even to house animals. Walking in today and looking around these rooms, and again, we just are so grateful to Judge Rubin for his order that has now made it clear that you cannot house at least 225 people. It's just unimaginable how that could happen in these rooms. 225, and he said now they are only fit for, at the most, 55 people. So these have been, these conditions are inhumane, they are cruel, and they're consistent with the desires of this administration, who have no interest whatsoever in making the lives of Americans better, because if they did, they wouldn't have forward funded $75 billion to fund an operation that is inhumane, and as I've mentioned, is unfit for animals. And so for anyone who wants to understand, and this is not a place to house hardened criminals, the information doesn't support that. What we're seeing instead here are people like a woman who we saw upstairs who has been committed no crime, who's been here for close to 2 decades, who's the mother of a teenage son, and who's nervous today about whether or not she'll be able to go home to rejoin him. This is who they have here, mothers and grandmothers and aunts and uncles who have committed no crime. But $75 billion, so anyone who wants to understand right now why they cannot afford their health care, if you want to understand why you can't afford the cost of groceries, why you can't afford to pay for energy or housing, it's because our government has prioritized at the tune of $75 billion supplemental nutrition programs, the things that help Americans. We have said we cannot afford, but we can forward fund $75 billion of your taxpayer dollars to support a facility like this one that is not fit for animals. It is shameful. And history will record it as such. It is shameful. So I'm going to hand over now the microphone to Congressman Mfume. I want to thank him as well for his leadership, and he will be able to provide his insights regarding today's visit.
Thank you very much, Senator Alsobrooks. This is my 3rd trip here, and some of you have been here for each one of those. They don't get any better. They always seem to deteriorate. And I just want to say a couple of things that need to be said. So allow me to be deliberately redundant for a moment and pick up on the Senator's comments about our team. This is a federal agency. This is by and large a federal effort, both the House and the Senate of the United States working together on this. But we've got great partners here in the state of Maryland. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the work of our Senate President Bill Ferguson and all the members of the Senate and the House of Delegates, and if I did not point out the work of our Mayor, Mayor Brandon Scott, and the President of our City Council, Zeke Cohen, and the council members who are here today. That's what it's going to take, a team united against the ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. One of the reasons, as some of you know, I signed on to the articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem is because this whole agency is a sham. It's predicated on the possibility of protecting people, but it's out snatching grandmothers and fathers and ministers off of bus stops, coming out of a Walmart, pulling them out of cars. These things I don't make up. They are happening all over this country. And we don't want them happening here in Baltimore. And yes, I think they're getting ready for a surge, and you just won't seem to admit it. But we're getting ready to deal with the surge, and we are admitting it. We cannot undergo what other cities have gone through. We got to continue to fight back, push back, stand up, speak out, and resist. Now, if I'm wrong, then history will record that. But everything I've seen says that things are getting worse with ICE, not better. And the new replacement that the president has put in place over Kristi Noem is no piece of cake either. So it's important for hardworking Americans to know this is not about the worst of the worst. All of us here want them locked up. All of us here want them deported. All of us here want them off of our streets. But they're going after just the opposite. Anybody that looks a little different, walks a little different, or speaks a little different. It's that kind of stereotype that concerns us. And the people who are snatching them off of our streets, they look like Oath Keepers. They look like the Proud Boys. They look like the disinherited that just found a way to get into the administration and to get hired. We all know they don't get the right kind of training, and they don't get the right kind of direction. So it's a sad, sad situation, but the good thing is that we are all going to fight back and continue to fight back. There's so many issues that trouble us in this country. This is just one, but today this is the one that means the most because of what we just saw upstairs. Senator Orso Brooks is absolutely correct. You would not put your animals in some of these cells that we saw where the seats are made out of concrete, where the privacy doesn't really exist. There's a toilet, there's a small water bowl in there, and then to throw sponge or plastic blankets and cots out for people to sleep at night. One of the cells, as Chris pointed out, has a capacity of 65. A couple of cells have the capacity of 18. You could not get 5 people in there, not even 5. So the staff here is doing what the staff has to do. They talk about their role, their responsibility, but they are not the ones to answer the questions. Those have to be answered by ICE. And for Senator Orso Brooks to remind us that this great, big, ugly bill that the president was in love with, that passed over our fight and our objections, did bankroll $75 billion for ICE into the future. So you see, there's nothing beautiful about that, and there's nothing beautiful about what we saw upstairs. So this is visit number 3. I want to bring forward Congressman Ivey, who's been here a couple of times, who raised some very cogent points upstairs. Both he and Senator Orso Brooks were prosecuting state's attorneys. They know something about the law, and they certainly know something about the interpretation of Judge Rubin's decision. So please welcome Senator Congressman Glenn Ivey. You'll take the promotion. Okay.
Thank you, Congressman. I am disgusted by what I just saw. I've been in and out of law enforcement. I've been practicing law for 40 years. And I've been in jails as a prosecutor, as a defense lawyer. I've interviewed, witnesses and clients in jails. I've never seen anything like that. I really have not. It really was, we adopted 2 dogs a little while ago, and we went to the shelter to go get them. And the shelter space is better than the human space they've got upstairs. I mean, it's truly appalling. As Kwesi was just saying, I mean, concrete floors, concrete benches, 1 toilet. The room that's supposed to hold 70 people had 1 toilet. And the water next to it, like right next to the toilet, right? Now, I asked them, they had like the cot things that people could sleep on. And somebody asked, well, how many you got? They said 100. But before the judicial order, they could hold up to 225 people in there. What happened to the other 125 if they didn't have cots? They were sleeping on floors. I just got back from Montgomery and Selma for Bloody Sunday. And part of what we did while we were down there was we actually toured old slave quarters. And I gotta say, they looked pretty much like what we just saw upstairs. In fact, they might have been a little bit better than what we just saw upstairs. It's shocking. It's un-American. It's illegal. Thank God the judge finally came through and said, this is too much. You've got capacity for 4 times more people than you actually should have in there. Well, thank God for Judge Rubin, because these people obviously need judges and court orders to steer them on the right track. And then one last point. Okay, the thing holds 225 people. Are you serious that there's not not 1 person there? Seriously? How convenient. How convenient. And then they're going to say they got to build these new facilities to hold hundreds of more people. Well, if you don't have anybody up there, where are you going to send them to? Why do we need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars for more facilities? We don't. That was a sham. We know it. This is a fight. We know it. This is something we've got to win, because the Constitution hangs in the balance, but human lives hang in the balance. As we were walking in, as Senator Also Brooks mentioned, there was a woman they'd taken in there already, and they did all this talk about we only get the worst of the worst. This woman's never done anything like that. And I'm anxious to see if she actually comes out of there. They told me she was gonna. They told me they were gonna hold her today, but we'll see. But it's unfortunate that members of Congress have to be present in order for that to not happen. Because we know day in and day out, in fact, after we leave later today, they're going to hold people who've never committed a crime in the United States, who've done nothing but work hard and be good citizens here in the community, and don't deserve to be locked up. Let's stop wasting the money. The $2 billion a day in Iran, on top of this, think of what we could do if we use that money in the right way. The Trump administration did a $1 trillion cuts to Medicaid. We could fund it if we stop wasting money on stuff like this. So let me stop there, and I'm going to introduce Congressman Olszewski.
So I think you've heard the case made about why Americans are fed up with the way ICE operates. It's not just the deplorable conditions here in Baltimore and elsewhere, but it's the rounding up and the mass deportations of families, people who have spent their entire lives giving back to our American cities and communities across this country. It's the lawlessness with which this agency operates. It's seeing Americans killed and called domestic terrorists. People are rightly fed up, and it's why we're fighting back in the Congress, in the courts, in the community. And we do lift up those judicial decisions that allow us not only to practice what we knew is our congressional responsibility and right, but to enforce more humane and more decent conditions. It's why we join in spirit and in presence our friends and neighbors in Minneapolis and here in Baltimore, pushing back against the lawlessness, against the deaths and the killings of American citizens. And it's why we're fighting so hard in Congress. It's why this agency will not receive another penny without significant reforms and changes. It cannot be allowed to operate the way it currently is. President Trump can find billions of dollars for bombs, to blow up schools, and extract on a war he never received approval on, but nothing for basics. We have billions to target innocent immigrants, but not a penny for inflation. So let the word go out. Our priorities are wrong, but the people here are fighting for that. And thank God we have partners in local government like the mayor and the city council. And thank goodness we have people like our Speaker of the House and our next Speaker, the Senate President and leader of Maryland a leader in the Maryland General Assembly, Senate President Bill Ferguson, everybody.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you to our federal partners who are here today. I want to give a true and sincere, heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you. It matters that you're here today. It matters that you stood up and took the time and energy and the fight and resolve to say that this is unacceptable. I'd go one step further and say the investments that are being claimed, the $75 billion, cruelty is the objective. Terror is the objective. Unlawfulness is the objective. It is fear that is driving these decisions. It's trying to redefine who we are as Americans, as people, by using fear to split us apart. That's the big challenge here. And I want to say thank you again for standing up to that fear. Thank you for understanding that's not who we are as a people. Thank you for showing up today to believe that we have a different future ahead if we link arms and we fight. I'm so proud of the work that we've already been able to do. We entered session this year knowing that setting a new standard by saying that ICE, the unlawful ICE activities were unacceptable. We passed a bill to ban 287G agreements. In the Senate, we've passed a masking ban to say that those who are enforcing laws on the street can't do it anonymously with masks, raining terror on their neighbors. We're going to move forward with additional pieces of legislation for these detention centers that will be in Hagerstown, that if there is any way that we can prevent from operating here in the state of Maryland, we will do what we can to prevent it. Because what we know is that what's happening in this building behind me and what theoretically could happen in any future facility will be cruelty, will be terror, and will be unlawful. It's unacceptable. I want to finish with a final point. I see Principal Hornbeck here today, who is a principal in the 46th district of one of the schools, and a number of advocates here from CASA and other organizations that stand strong to fight for families. What I know Principal Hornbeck has been doing every single day this last year is counseling young children whose parents have been stolen from them in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night, and what's left are parents and educators and principals trying to explain what happened to mommy or daddy. That is not the America that we deserve. We must and we will do better, and we'll do it when we stand up with state and federal and local leaders who care and who understand with heart and passion that we are better than this. I want to thank the council president. I want to thank all of the members of the council and bring up an incredible partner in this work, Mayor Scott.
Good morning, everyone. I want to start by saying that here in Baltimore and Maryland, we have the best congressional delegation in the country. And we are here today because of their leadership and their fearlessness and their commitment to accountability, not just at this facility, but for ICE across this nation. Because we understand, Congressman Olszewski, that there are multiple wars going on right now. We cannot just let the war in Iran, even though it's very important, distract us from the war against American democracy, because that is why we're here today. And I'll be very as clear and quick as I can. We do not want this here. Last week, I signed an executive order that reaffirms that ICE agents cannot enter city facilities without a judicial warrant, that they may not and will not use city properties as staging areas, processing locations, or as operations bases, and immigration enforcement is the role of federal authorities and not the Baltimore City Police Department. In addition, I have authorized city lawyers that in their personal capacity on their own time to offer pro bono services to residents facing immigrant proceedings. But I also want to our immigrant neighbors for you to remember that we will always have your back. We will continue to have resources from legal services, know your rights information, and more. You can get that simply by going to the Baltimore City website. We will not turn our backs on you because we all know, we've heard it already today, this is not about public safety. In Baltimore, we know about building public safety in communities. This is about lies. This is about fear. This is about power. It's authoritarian, it's fascist, it's racist, and we have to all understand it may not have started with us, but it will never stop. If we let them do it to one group of people, they will keep going until anybody that challenges them, that doesn't look like them, that doesn't pray like them, is no longer in this country. We cannot allow that to happen. And I'm so proud to always have great partners, not just at the state level, thank you, Mr. Senate President, not just at the federal level, but at the local level here in the Baltimore City Council. I know the council and their colleagues have been working on legislation. We cannot wait to continue to partner with them every single day to ensure action that we can take here in Baltimore to serve our residents. Because Baltimore is and will always be a welcoming city. We are stronger in Baltimore because of our immigrant residents. We are stronger because of the culture that they bring to our city. And I'll say it again, we do not want this here in Baltimore. And with that, I will turn it over to my friend and partner, City Council President Zeke Cohen.
Thank you to our fearless federal delegation, to Senate President Ferguson, Mayor Scott, to my colleagues on the council. This is what unity looks like in the face of creeping authoritarianism. Today we will introduce a bill in the Baltimore City Council to ban private detention centers from Baltimore. I'm grateful to Council members Ramos, Gray, and Parker for their partnership on this legislation, to Mayor Scott for his executive order, and to all my colleagues for standing in solidarity. Let me be clear. I believe in comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship for the people that are already here. I also believe that if you commit a violent crime, you should be held fully accountable through the criminal justice system. But there is nothing just about packing people into private prisons and detention centers. There is nothing just about flying our neighbors without trial to a gulag in El Salvador, Senator. There is nothing just about having a federal black site in the middle of our city where people lack access to food, decent medicine, and a toothbrush, where they can't speak to their own families. And while we cannot keep the Department of Homeland Security from holding people here at Fallon, it's a federal building, our bill will ban them from buying up another space in Baltimore that would be used to inflict more cruelty onto our neighbors. The Trump administration, as Senator Brooks said, promised to go after the worst of the worst, and then did the opposite. We've watched masked agents jump out of unmarked cars to brutalize our neighbors in front of schools, churches, restaurants, and a Home Depot parking lot. We've seen families torn apart and traumatized. 5 parents have been taken from my son and daughter's school, Principal Hornbeck's school, shuffled around to detention centers. None of this makes America safe. What Baltimore proved, Mayor Scott, is that we don't need marauding ICE agents or private detention centers to reduce violence. We dropped homicides to historic lows with community policing, trauma-informed care, credible messengers, effective prosecution, and GVRS. Baltimore did that through collaboration with our city, state, and federal partners. And let's also be clear, our immigrant neighbors are not a blight on our city, they are a blessing. I thank God every single day that my son and daughter go to school with kids from all over the world. I'm grateful to live in a place that values the economic and cultural contributions of our immigrant community, where I can walk each day to work down Eastern Avenue and hear 5 different languages being spoken. Like the senator said, history will look back on this moment and ask who stood up for our democracy and who folded. Too many people with power have stayed silent. My great-grandmother sailed to this country from Austria. She came with a few coins she'd sewed into her clothes to evade the Nazis and very little language. Most of her family that stayed behind perished in the gas chambers. Yet a few short generations later, her grandson is the city council president of Baltimore. I owe it to her to expand opportunities for other people. So whether you grew up in Highlandtown or Honduras, El Salvador or Sandtown, Peru or Park Heights, know this. Like Mayor Scott said, as long as you follow the law, you are welcome here every day in Baltimore. And with that, I am proud to pass it off to my friend, my colleague, who has been an absolute leader on this work in our city, Councilmember Odette Ramos.
Thank you all. This is deeply, deeply, deeply personal for me. As the first, and still the only, hopefully not for too long, but still the only Latina elected official at all in Baltimore City, seeing my neighbors, my community snatched up, feeling the anxiety of mothers like myself having to plan for separation because it may end up being that we have to separate from our children. Can you imagine that? It is horrifying that our community, who has invested so much, not just in the city, but the entire nation, to come to this country to say that we want to make a better life for ourselves, but also for our communities and for our United States, to be treated this way? Are you serious? It's horrifying. It's horrifying. And so I'm so grateful to the congressional delegation for your fight for our community, for my colleagues in the City Council, for our state partners, because we know how important every single person is in our community. The City Council introduced a bill a couple weeks ago, and we will have a hearing tomorrow called the Safe Spaces and Communities Act that basically codifies what Baltimore has already been doing and will continue to do thanks to Mayor Scott's leadership and the executive order, which is that we are a welcoming city. BPD will not participate, and that every single agency will have a plan for addressing when ICE wants to come into our buildings. They cannot come into our buildings without a judicial warrant. It is a clear mandate, and it sends a clear message that Baltimore is serious. This ends here. This ends now. And that we will not let ICE and this racist, misogynist, white supremacist organization that is our federal government right now take over our city. It's not going to happen. And so, thank you. And so I just want to again thank our congressional delegation for always fighting, and my colleagues, and also the Senate President and our state colleagues. This is a moment for leadership, and I'm grateful that so many of us and my colleagues are stepping up to protect our community. It really, really means a lot to me personally, and to our community. I want to bring up also my colleague, Councilman Parker, whose community right now is really facing the brunt of this, and we'll talk a little bit about his experiences. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilperson Ramos. Thank you to all my colleagues here on the state and federal level. We keep coming back to this place. We keep coming back to this place. Not only on days like this, but alongside our neighbors who come here for check-ins, who come here for answers, who come here in tears and in terror trying to find out information about their roommates, about their friends, about their sibling, their aunts, their parents. We keep coming back here because it's a gaping wound in the heart of our city, and it hasn't been healed yet. The wounds from this place stretch to every corner of our city. It stretches to graduate students at Hopkins and in Morgan. It stretches to refugees from Afghanistan. It stretches to asylee seekers from Somalia. It stretches to every corner of our city and every corner of our state. I've visited with people here from the Eastern Shore and from out in Williamsport and from down by D.C. All of the people are brought here to this place because it's a place of suffering, a place of cruelty, and a place of punishment by design. So we keep coming back because we know it does not represent our city, our state, or the values of the country that we hold dear. We keep coming back because we've been commanded to visit those who are imprisoned, to take care of those who are vulnerable, to stand up and to speak out against injustice done, especially when it's done in our name, against our neighbors. We keep coming back to this place until it is no more, until it is different, until it reflects the kind of city, state, and country that we need and that we demand and that we deserve. Our coming back is a form of resistance, but that resistance happens even more so on the streets of our city as neighbors look out for each other, as they bring each other food, as they take care of each other's kids, as they look out for one another, as they patrol the streets and pass information about what is happening on a daily basis so that people can make decisions about whether it's safe to go to school, to go to worship, to go out to take care of their family needs, to go to Bayview, to go to Johns Hopkins for their medical care. Every day, neighbors are looking out for each other so that they can try to keep each other safe, to reduce the harm, to push back and resist against this evil. Everyday lawyers come to this place to try to fight for the constitutional rights and the due process of our neighbors. And we thank our mayoral administration for the funding to help make that happen and for the work that's being done to inform people of their legal rights and help prepare themselves and their families here in our community for what happens when this evil touches them or comes close to them. We do this in our state house as we pass laws to protect our communities. We resist there in Annapolis. We resist here in City Hall with our executive orders, with our legislation that we're considering. And all of that doesn't end this right away, but it pushes back against the harm. It helps protect our neighbors each and every day. And it continues to call out evil for being evil. It's speaking the truth to systems of injustice and systems of cruelty that are represented in this place but are taking place across our city and across our country. As we work towards the justice and the liberation that we know will come, and we will be here on that day too, speaking out and continuing to speak the truth about what has happened here and continue to advocate for the values of love and care for our neighbors that undergird everything we do as a city. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you all for the work you do every day to show up with and for our neighbors, especially those in the 1st District in Southeast Baltimore. Thank you all. I bring up Councilman Gray.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilman Gray. What we're witnessing right now in the streets of America and also here in Baltimore City is a civil rights emergency. We have unmasked, we have unmarked cars, masked agents, people being detained illegally, detention centers holding people inhumanely. I want to make this clear. This isn't about tools of enforcement. These are tools of fear. And this is why we're all here, because Baltimore City will not allow its staff, its data, our resources, or our facilities to be used as instruments of discrimination against anyone. Those are our immigrant communities, our black and brown communities, or anyone that this administration will see as a target just because they don't adhere to what they would like to see. But I'm here today to also call on all Baltimoreans. This is a moment for all of us to stand up for one another. As a black man in this country, I've seen when communities, and particularly my community, is looked at a different way, when you're looked at as if your lives don't matter, and when you're treated differently than others. And I want to say that when that happens to one marginalized group, it does not stop there. And this is why we're here collectively to stand up for our neighbors. Public safety depends on trust, and when any community lives in fear, all of us are less safe. Civil rights are not conditional. They are not suspended based on where you were born or what you look like. And this is about humanity, this is about respect, And this is about standing with and fighting for our neighbors. And I just want to thank our federal leaders, our state leaders, and our local leaders, including my colleagues and the council president, for the legislation that we are introducing and that we will pass, because we want everyone to know that Baltimore is for everyone, will continue to be for everyone. And if you come here as a neighbor, we will love you as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray, and to all of our colleagues who are part of Team Maryland, Baltimore, the state of Maryland, our federal delegation. Thank all of you who are here and have been so much a part of the fight for justice and accountability as we push back against a lawless administration that's attacking our Constitution, our democracy, and what's happening here is part of that attack. We're happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Senator. I don't know if this is working. Or you can probably hear me. I'm Kate Amara from WBAL-TV in Baltimore. I'm curious if you were able to take any photos or videos from your tour of the facility, and if not, why? And I think a couple of you sounded quite skeptical about the fact that there was nobody being held in a place that could hold more than 200 people, and if you think there was that was done on purpose.
Let me just say, with respect to photographs, this became quite a contentious issue right at the beginning, and everybody was part of pushing back on their claim that, couldn't take a camera into the facility to take photos. Our view is that's part of transparency and part of accountability. They say they have a nationwide policy against bringing any kind of cameras into this kind of facility. We are going to push back. I think Congressman Ivey said, and Congressman Fume said, look out for subpoenas. Our view is that the American people need to be able to see what's happening. We're recounting, to the best of our ability, the inhumane conditions here. But there's no substitute for a photograph of the place, as Senator Alsterbrook said, that's not fit for animals, and they were cramming people in. So we're going to continue to push back on that. We wanted to take our cameras in to take photos. They obviously are continuing this pattern of wanting to hide what's happening from the American people, including the conditions there. And I don't know if anyone we. Look, we chose today. The short answer is I don't know. I don't have facts behind that. What we do know, as you know, because you've seen the videos, is there have been times this place is just crammed, and obviously Judge Rubin has seen those photos and the evidence, because in her ruling, she made it absolutely clear that you can't cram 225 people in here when it only really has a capacity for 55. And I do want to clarify one thing, because when we said the rooms have the capacity, that's what they claimed. In other words, it was their little pamphlets on each room. They have 5 rooms. Each one of them said capacity. One said 70, one said 65, 18. And the point we're all making here is they had one room of the 5 where they claim you have a capacity of 70.